Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Pat coming at you with this and that, and today we are going to look at nostalgia being one hell of a drug, and how it plays an important role and factor in our lives, and stemming from early childhood and evolving as time goes on, and we carry it with us moving forward in our lives, and how nostalgia plays a big role in that. And without any further ado, let's jump right in. Hey, everyone. Remember Chewbacca? Oh, I remember. Everyone remember Stormtroopers? Oh, I remember. How about Darth Vader? Oh, I remember. Oh, and what about the Millennium Falcon? Yeah. Oh, yeah, I remember. Oh, and remember Super Mario Brothers? And The Legend of Zelda? Oh, yeah, I remember. Oh, and how about the Game Boy? Yeah. And remember the Game Gear? Oh, yeah, I remember. What about Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark? Oh, I remember. Oh, and what about Sonic the Hedgehog? Yeah. And the Sega Genesis? Yeah. Oh, I remember, yeah. Oh, do you all remember Mario Kart 64? Oh, yeah, and what about GoldenEye 64? Yeah. Oh, but what about Star Fox 64 with the Rumble Pack and you get to feel the vibration as you play? Oh, yeah, I remember. How about that Sinbad pirate movie and the Genie movie from the 90s? Y'all remember that? Yeah? Yeah, I guess I remember, yeah. These are just a few of the many vast examples of nostalgia in the form of media and entertainment for some of us who grew up in the 80s and 90s. Now you might be asking yourself, how can a handful of random pop culture references have anything in common? Well, that being, they all represent a form of nostalgia for us and many of us who grew up within this era. This is the era that represented iconic heroes, symbolic artifacts, and the rise of video game dominance that we all know and love today. Even such entities that do not really exist and are part of what is called the Mandela effect, such as other than the fact that Sinbad himself used to wear some really baggy pirate-looking clothing in the 90s with some really questionable outfits. So what is it about nostalgia that is such a driving force behind what compels our minds today in such forms of life as decision-making and even to the point of crucial thinking? Well, let's start from the beginning. The majority of memories that we have stem from early childhood and carry over into adolescence but gradually lessen over time by the time we reach our full adulthood. When humans are born, and our children from the age of about 3 or 4 will begin to develop our brains more and begin to retain moments that transpire in the world and capture them into an ethereal bubble and store them into our memory banks to recall at any time we want. That is, if the memory is worth recalling at all. While most forms of nostalgia are positive, some memories are not always as pleasant as that moment when you picked up a Nintendo controller for the first time to play the very first level of Super Mario Brothers. Or that first time when you went into a cave in The Legend of Zelda and a creepy old man gave you a wooden sword to a child because it was too dangerous to go alone into the wilderness. However, they are still all considered nostalgic because they cause such a tremendous impact on one's life. Let's say Timmy is about 5 years old and is learning how to ride a bike without training wheels. During his trials, one day he happens to lose balance, fall off his bike, and cut both of his knees and sprain both ankles at the same time, as fate would have it. Little Timmy then decides he's never going to learn how to ride a bike again. It's not a pleasant memory, but little Timmy may carry on over this memory for the rest of his life as it had such a big impact on his childhood. When he is older, and if people ask him, how did you ever learn how to ride a bike? He can not only say no, but recall such a traumatic experience that shaped his bike riding fate into the present day in such detail. Now let's say little Timmy started riding a bike with training wheels at the age of 5 and nothing went wrong, and he eventually graduated to riding a bike with 2 wheels. Like a fucking champion. So later on during his life, if the topic ever came up about bike riding, he may not recall the exact moment when he learned how to ride. He'll only know that he learned how to ride at some point when he was a child. The devil is in the details here, so to speak. And the more prominent the events that transpire in your life, good or bad, the more you will recall and retain them, and even with greater detail. Now moving along here, let's say that Petey is a preteen boy in the late 90s who indulges in a plethora of video games. Sometimes on a weekend he goes over to his relative's house to enjoy the competitive elements that gaming offers in the form of racing and shooting. He would partake in numerous races of Mario Kart 64, countless dogfighting matches in Star Fox 64, and the tactical espionage shooting of GoldenEye 64. So after hours of racing, dodging shells, popping balloons, aiming true, and of course, losing many, many friends with that infamous fucking blue shell in Mario Kart. And after countless hours of shooting down starships in Star Fox 64. And after cursing out that stupid kid who picked Oddjob in GoldenEye, even though we said nobody picks Oddjob in fucking GoldenEye, you cheating miserable fucks. Sorry, got a little sidetracked there. So after all that, Petey then leaves his relative's house to return back home, only to prepare for school the next day. The next day at school, Petey is in class doing his assignments when he notices out of the corner of his left eye a pencil about to roll off the student's desk that's to the left of him. Petey then jerks his arm to the left and catches the pencil before it falls off and reaches the floor. Petey did not realize it, but by him dodging those shells, lasers, and bullets in the games he played the day prior, it allowed him to have a slight form of heightened reflexes as his brain and body worked in unison to move his arm and catch the object before it reached the floor, more so than a person who did not attune their senses. In a hobby like video games that test hand-eye coordination. In video games, repetition is key. By performing various tasks over and over again, a person trains their mind and body to react in ways that are almost considered unnatural by the laws of man. Now, hold your horses a second. I'm not saying that everyone that plays video games has the reflexes of Spider-Man, or the attunement of a Jedi Knight, as severely awesome as that would be, but it does test their critical thinking and it improves their reflex actions from time to time that allows them to think and perform outside the box. Speaking of critical thinking, let's say that it's a bright and sunny Saturday morning in the spring of 1987. You are 7 years old and wake up. Proceed to then have your Cookie Crisp. Or some of those delicious and delectable Fruity Pebbles. While you pop on the Saturday morning cartoons like Transformers. Or hell, maybe even Thundercats. Afterwards, you then proceed back to your room and take out that gilded cartridge crafted with great care by the Hylian warriors of futures past. Proceed to inhale deeply, take a huge breath, and blow into the bottom of that motherfucking cartridge because that's just what we did back then. You then insert your cartridge into your Nintendo Entertainment System and start to hear the whimsical and delightful music of The Legend of Zelda. As your adventure continues across the vast land of Hyrule, you seem to discover many dungeons along your path in which require you to solve puzzles and obtain keys in order to open your path and venture forward. Most of the puzzle solving includes memorizing geometrical squares or blocks to move them in such a pattern that they will allow secret passages and doors to open so you can continue your hero's journey. After spending countless hours dungeon crawling, slaying mythical beasts, solving numerous shape-shifting puzzles, and obtaining that sweet, sweet Master Sword, He then obtained the Triforce, used it to slay the evil Lord Ganon with that Master Sword, rescue the princess, and finally lay down to rest for a good long while. The next day, your friend calls you up and invites you over to his house because he has something really cool to show you. Now, your friend is not into video games as much as you are. He's more of a board game person. So his mom just got him this new game called Simon, and he wanted to share it with you and test it out with you. In this game called Simon, you have to memorize color patterns, and in order to go and exceed for as many turns as possible before you fail. So your friend ends up getting a score of 4 rounds before he fails to memorize the patterns, and you end up getting a whopping score of 12 without failing. Could it be that the memory of your friend is not as attuned as yours because you just spent the previous day playing The Legend of Zelda and solving memorization puzzles in a plethora of different dungeons with all these shapes and memorizing which ones go here and move there and so on and so forth? It is indeed very possible and almost factual. Once again, repetition is key, and it shapes the mind to retain and remember glimpses of imagery that will help you in such tasks as doing well in memorization game or even some type of memory exam. Video games such as The Legend of Zelda are prime examples of how nostalgia not only plays a factor in critical thinking, but also how our minds are shaped for when we become adults and how our way of thinking is affected by experiencing games like this in the past in our childhoods. For the most part, The Legend of Zelda series is aimed at a child base with its whimsical characters and environments and tunes. However, deep beneath its surface, those games may contain such a deep nostalgic presence in the form of a twisted tone that it can only be harnessed and resonated years and decades later when we reach adulthood and see how we use our intellect and minds to either provide rational thought or even something as trivial as conversing with someone and describing your likes and desires. For example, why is it that some of us migrate towards such dark TV shows such as the Game of Thrones series? Or dark and disturbing comic books like Deadpool vs. Carnage with guts and fucking gore just spewing out of every single page and orifice. Or such movies like Dark City that delivers such twisted and demented messages. The Punisher and Fight Club are perfect examples here. Could it be that our love for these two embodiments of physical and psychological warfare on the mind, body, and spirit stem from our interaction with, let's say, The Legend of Zelda, Link's Awakening on the Game Boy? Or even The Legend of Zelda, Majora's Mask for the Nintendo 64? I know I'm singling out Zelda a lot but there's a reason and method for my madness here, I promise you. Both of these games in particular in the series have a deeply disturbing underlying message. In Link's Awakening, you play as the famed hero Link, hero of Hyrule, who awakens on an island with no memory of how he got there, so his goal is to find a way off the island and get back to his homeland in Hyrule. Now, before we proceed any further, I'm just going to put up a big-ass spoiler alert flag right here, because from now until pretty much the end of the video, I am going to be spoiling a shit ton of movies and video games, so brace yourselves because here we go. At the end of the game, Link's Awakening, Link encounters the Windfish, who is a mythical creature and king of the island that informs Link he is part of some type of deep REM-like fever dream, that in which once he wakes up from all of the creatures and inhabitants of that island and dream he is presently on will cease to exist and pretty much die. The game's theme and message here then becomes quite complex. It completely twists the plot and forces one's mind into a form of psychosis that cannot necessarily determine fiction from reality. Is Link really in that dream, or is he just imagining everything? Or is he really there on that island and he is just have some type of form of some type of like illusion that he's created for himself because he's been on that island for so long and he's just creating illusions and images that aren't really there? The same can be said about the movie Fight Club. In this movie, we cannot tell what is fact from fiction as the main character slips in and out of a deep schizophrenic psychosis that plays the duality of himself with a character who he may or may not have created. He creates a character called Tyler Durden who was everything the main character was not. Like seen in Link's Awakening, the focus of the story is then shifted from reality to fantasy in the blink of an eye, where you, the player and the main character in Fight Club, and Link as well as are uncertain whether the world they are living in and characters around them and within them are real or some part of an imaginative force. Nobody can really pinpoint the truth of the matters, only that there are multiple outcomes for their unique situations. The Punisher and The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask are also similar in their own unique and diverse ways. Now, before I continue, I want to go on record for saying I feel that Majora's Mask is the copyrighted and trademarked property of not only Nintendo, but Lucifer as well. That's right, folks. This game is possessed by the devil, and I can prove that with hard concrete evidence. But that will have to be a video for another time. In the meantime, just Google or YouTube Ben Drowned after finishing this, and I promise you that you will not sleep well tonight after seeing that. Now, on to Majora's Mask. Again, spoiler alert here, as many feel and believe that the story of Majora's Mask takes place with Link having failed in all his endeavors to stop Ganondorf from taking over the world and land of Hyrule. Princess Zelda has been enslaved and imprisoned. And Link himself was either dead or in some kind of strange, Hylian-like limbo or afterlife, where Link has a finite amount of time to save the world from a moon-faced god who's really angry because he hasn't taken a decent shit in over a year. To sum it up, and to get my point across, either Link is either dead in this game, or Link is either trapped in some type of weird, like I said, Hylian-like limbo, where he's just kind of stagnant and just running through the motions at this point, doing whatever he can to survive in a world he's not familiar with, expelling whatever evil he can around him until death comes knocking on his door. The same can be said for the Punisher. The man once known as Frank Castle, who is now dead and has been ever since his family's dark and bloody, gruesome murder right in front of his eyes, leaving behind the shell of a former man that he once was, and he's just simply doing what good he can in the world, righting the wrongs of the world while being consumed in the hell inside his mind on that earth that he is living in. The same could be said as Link in Majora's Mask until that fateful day when the Grim Reaper comes beckoning for both of them. Therein lies our attraction to such nostalgic elements of the past to that of the present in a nutshell. But it is only a mere taste of the many nostalgic elements of the past that carry on into our present and then future, forever shaping and molding both conscious and subconscious states of our minds, determining our focus and reality. Now, in conclusion, I would like to leave you all with a disturbing thought about a form of nostalgia that can pander to even the most enlightened thinkers as hazardous and demeaning. How many of us grew up idolizing Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, Han Solo, and Princess Leia from a galaxy far, far away? How many of us used to cherish those films and even used to dress up like those characters for either Halloween or even go to extreme lengths to cosplay at shows such as Comic-Con or just for fun and create videos and roleplay as them for blogging purposes? George Lucas has created something unlike the world has ever seen or will see ever again, and even with his infamously criticized and ridiculed prequels, including some things that may haunt your dreams to this very date, Star Wars franchise was still a force to be reckoned with, and like the Force itself, was a powerful ally of nostalgia indeed. The nostalgia of Star Wars was so powerful and once so illustrious and fruitful, it has caused an entire generation of people to herd sheepishly into the theaters to support the ongoing cancer of the new modern world that is known quite simply as the sequel trilogy. That's right, everyone. The soulless embodiment of corruption, the insatiable form of greed, and the rape and pillaging of the Star Wars franchise that is known in the history of man, that the majority of us continue to witness the horror. Like it's watching some type of amazing train wreck that you just can't look away from, even though you try so many times. And why, you may be wondering, why? What drives us as humans to such disgusting habits and lengths? Once again, the devil is in the details here, and nostalgia is a pathway to many abilities that some consider to be unnatural. The most frightening ability nostalgia gives us is the ability to go and pay hard-earned dollars to experience something that is completely unworthy, unholy, and just plain unnecessarily bad for our souls. Because hey, nostalgia said it was a good idea. This is not only present in Star Wars, but other pieces of media as well. How many of us saw Batman vs. Superman only because it's a perfect rendition of Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns? How many of us saw Man of Steel because we saw the Nolan brothers had their names at the end of the credits and we thought it would be just as good as The Dark Knight, if not better? Tell me again, how many of us flocked to theaters to see Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull? Only simply because we adored and loved Harrison Ford in the original adventures of the Indiana Jones trilogy. Give me the total number of cattle who grazed on over to the theaters to see the Hobbit trilogy. After the renowned success and the beloved Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's not quite so different. Who ran out and got The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask because it took place in the same world and timeline? It was considered a sequel as The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. The same can also be said with video game consoles. How many of us who owned Game Boys had to wait in line for over 3 hours or more for this fucking piece of shit? On the other side of the fence, the same can be said. How many of us purchased Sonic the Hedgehog for the Xbox 360 and had to endure that Xbox 360 Sonic piece of fucking glitchy shit because of our fond recollections of games such as Sonic Adventure on the Dreamcast? The list goes on and on. All of these newly released end resulted products listed above and in this video have ended in either disappointment over their predecessors in some way, shape, or form, or some type of just not being very good as things of the past as they once were. These letdowns that I just stated cannot hold a candle to their nostalgic ancestral entities of the past that brought us such warmth and joy. Simply stated, well, they just don't make them like they used to. So why do we continue to follow this systematic pattern? Does nostalgia alone drive our state of mind, or is it something deeper and something even more psychological? I feel like there is another driving force behind the nostalgia factor that goes hand in hand with the tandem of nostalgia. I strongly believe that married to nostalgia is FOMO, F-O-M-O, or the fear of missing out, which is a syndrome created by chemicals in the brain that develop such an emotional fear that if they were ever to stop witnessing a piece of intellectual property they have invested so much time and energy into, that they become terrified as to what the outcome may be. Even if no harm were to come to them physically, in their minds they think that if they were to stop witnessing something that they have invested so much time and effort into, that they would just simply cease to exist, I guess. Emotionally speaking, these people are frightened to the point of stasis, that if they were to ever miss out on viewing or playing or experiencing something that they have dumped such a large chunk of their lives to, that their minds may just collapse into themselves like a neutron star. It fascinates the very mind and can even warrant further study to what drives an individual to such extreme lengths of commitment. With nostalgic fear being one of the leading and driving causes. A prime example of this would be the television show The Walking Dead, based on Robert Kirkman's comic series. The show has been renewed for its 11th season and has long since lost a lot of people's interest, including my own, so they've just simply stopped watching. On the other side of the coin, I know a lot of people who continue watching even though the show has turned stale. But why? FOMO! That's why. God forbid these people should miss out on just a bunch of people walking down a barren road with no other objectives other than to have the grimaces on their faces and to just keep it moving with nothing happening. Just nothing happening, nothing happening, nothing happening, and yeah, a lot of people look pissed. And what about the next Star Wars movie? And which is certainly not exempt from this. Episode 9 is due out in December of 2019, and the majority of people I know are committed to seeing it still. Still, even after every one of them claimed Episode 8 ruined the franchise for them, including myself. But I'm not going to actually see the movie. I can give a shit less about it now because, Episode 8 did ruin my life. But a lot of these other people I know are still going to see. They're committed to seeing how it ends. But why? Why? Because of the fear of missing out. Like the old fucking washwomen that they are. They can't miss a goddamn moment, no matter how horrendous it may be. Now, I will leave you with this last and final thought to ponder. If one is to break away from that of the sheepish herd, they must first act and lead like a member of the wolf pack. I would like to thank you all for watching, and I hope there will be more videos like this to come. And if you enjoyed that, give it a like and a sub. If not, give it a dislike. Either way, thank you for watching. I love all of you, and I appreciate you even taking the time out to watch this. Have a great day.